Big cities, Amsterdam and Copenhagen in particular, comparable in size to Portland. Even though they've got very high mode split, and even though they've got tremendous systems and programs in place, they are still spending at a very high per capita level because they are not satisfied with where they're at. They want to continue to advance. In Portland, we've achieved a little bit, but we've only spent very little bit. We recognize that what we would like to do is be able to have about $10 to $15 million a year at the start. Pretty soon. We'd like to get that pretty soon. We believe that our agency could easily absorb that money in our current configuration, the current way we deliver projects. At least at a start, $10 to $15 million a year. That translates on a per capita level to about $18 per capita per year. That's about a cup of coffee per person per month. That's about 2 pitchers of beer per person per year. That would give us, really, it would build us a tremendous network of bikeways. So city number 3, the city we want. This is out of our currently public review draft of our bike master plan. We want bicycling to be a main pillar of our transportation system, where more than a quarter of trips are made by bike. This is what we want. This is what cities around the world have achieved. What research has shown, and what the Dutch themselves said, is that they have achieved what they've achieved by a steady application of pro-bicycle policies over a period of many years. That's what they've done. They've had policies, they've enacted them, they've done it consistently over time, and they have achieved much. This is what we want. Maybe a little neater, but basically that's what we want. Copenhagen wants to become Europe's cleanest capital, and they see the bike as playing a leading role in it. They want a 50% bike commute split. There's a really great website called CopenhagenEyes.com, CopenhagenIze.com, and they have a video in there of bicycle traffic in Copenhagen in the 1930s. I recommend looking at it. It's tremendous. Historic levels of bike use in most of these European cities were higher pre-World War II than they are today. Very high levels of bike use. After World War II, the Dutch, the Danes, the Germans, the Brits, they all changed their policies to start to be more auto-centric. Everybody wanted to be like America. And so they started to get rid of bike facilities, they started to put more on-street parking, they started to put in more travel lanes. They didn't really build a lot of stuff. I mean, they probably built some freeways, but they didn't change the cores of their cities, these medieval cities, these small, tightly constructed cities. They just started dedicating more space to cars. And it was going that way for quite a while, and bike use in those cities was plummeting. And then came the 70s, and there was an increasing awareness about environmental problems, air pollution, water pollution. There was the Arab oil embargo, there was the OPEC oil embargo, and everybody started to all of a sudden get very nervous about the way things were going. The Dutch and the Danes noticed that people were becoming heavier and less fit, and they did an about-face in the 1970s. The Germans did it to a certain extent, the Danes did it, the Dutch did it, the Brits did it. The Brits did it. And what you see in Germany, what you see in the Netherlands, what you see in Denmark is after that curve of bike use reached its peak and then came down, beginning in the 70s, it started to rise again. And it's still rising. In Britain, it didn't rise, it stayed low. And so even though in these cities, in these countries, they have not yet reached pre-World War II peaks of bike use, they're not even close, in fact. They are trying to regain what they once had, and it was all because they changed their policies. I mean, they had a long history. They had a long tradition of bike use, and they felt like they were losing something that they wanted to regain. So they were coming from a different position, but they really changed their policies back then. This is what we've learned about what it takes to get to where we want to be. You need bike infrastructure. It's got to appeal to the average person. It's got to be visible. And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to make bicycling irresistible. So for whom are we building a bikeway network? This is really the crux of our analysis. This is the basis of our update to our bike master plan. So whatever you want to call it. So if you take the spectrum of people in the city of Portland, probably everywhere, and you think about their relationships using a bicycle for transportation. At the far left, you've got the people who will ride under any conditions. They don't need bike lanes. They will ride on an arterial street. In most U.S. cities, you see about 1% or fewer of bike trips are made, of commute trips are made by bicycle. And so the strongest and fearless group are the people that will ride under the worst of conditions for bicycling, which is what you have in most American cities. What really surprised me was this next group, what we call the enthused and confident group. They won't ride on an arterial street in the absence of a bike lane, but they will run. You put a 1.5 meter bike lane out there and they will run. And this is the group, maybe 10–15%, something like that. This is the group that has largely responded to Portland's efforts in building a bikeway network. This is the group that has made Portland the US's most bike-friendly city. It's not a big group. And yet their presence has completely changed the landscape of Portland. At the far right, our survey data tells us that there's about a third of the population that just is not interested in using a bike for transportation, and that's fine. That still leaves about 50–60% of the population, the group we call the interested but concerned. And that group is our target. They like to ride bikes. They might ride a bike in their neighborhood. They might drive down to the neighborhood path. They might drive down to a path and take a bike ride, take a pleasant recreational ride on a place where there's no cars. But they are not comfortable in traffic. They are not comfortable in a 1.5 meter bike lane in a busy street. If we can make things safe and comfortable for them, these people will ride. These are the people that are riding in all those cities around the world, because those cities have done such a good job of making bicycling essentially carefree. How are we going to attract them? Well, we're going to look at what some international design principles are. How did the Dutch attract so many people? And these are the Dutch design principles for designing bikeways and designing bikeway networks. You want to create conditions of comfort, safety, and attractiveness. You want to create direct routes and a well-connected system. And I never really thought about comfort before with bicycling. You always think about safety. But I understand that there's a huge distinction between safety and comfort. And the way that I think about it is, think about a 60K street, 60 kilometer per hour street, 10,000 cars a day, no bike facilities. The place, as a cyclist, the best place to ride on that roadway is to just take the lane. Get in the middle of the travel lane, and that is the safest place to be. That's where the strong and the fearless ride, right? A motorist is going to try to pass you in the same lane. They're going to have to go around you. Statistically, the incidence of a cyclist under those conditions being rear-ended by a motorist is almost nil, infinitesimal. Statistically, you are quite safe. But you are anything but comfortable. There is no way you are comfortable out there. So it's not just about safety, it's about the feeling of safety, which I think of as comfort, and I think that's what the Dutch do as well. The Dutch talk about minimizing the complexity of the interaction between the motorist and between the cyclist and the motorist. And that's what we're trying to do. This is what we intend to do. We intend to build a dense network of connected bikeways that are low stress and that provide access to common destinations.